Hey, you're listening to the Sub Club podcast, a show dedicated to the best practices for building and growing subscription app businesses. We'll share insider secrets from the top subscription apps on the app stores. Let's get into the show.
Hello, I'm your host, David Barnard, and with me today, Revenue Cat CEO Gessica Bicego. Our guest today is Gessica Bicego, Chief Marketing Officer at Paired, the #1 app for couples. Prior to joining Paired, Gessica spent 6 years leading performance marketing and growth at Blinkist. On the podcast, we talk with Gessica about how to approach brand marketing for apps, finding product, channel, messaging fit, and why you shouldn't even refer to Bill Gates in an ad campaign. Hi, Gessica. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. Really looking forward to talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of this podcast, and so are the co-founders at Paired. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Diego. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, speaking of Paired, I've actually had you on the list to invite as a guest since you were at Blinkist. But in the meantime, you actually joined Paired. So tell me a bit about Paired and what was so exciting about joining the team there.
Of course. And I hope you're ready for a cheesy story because that's a cheesy one. What Paired is a fun app for couple designed to bring you closer together. So that's the pitch. Let me tell you more. We all know that, the romantic relationship that we have with our partner is one of the most important one. But still, I'm pretty sure, especially after a lot of years, a lot of kids, there's not much time that goes into taking care of their relationship. And that's exactly what Paired does. So every day you have questions, quizzes, games to really connect with your partner and have a healthier and happier relationship. And so why I decided to join, I was in maternity leave. It was during my maternity leave. I had a call with Kevin, one of the co-founder, and because he just wanted to get some advice. And I gave him some advice, and then I checked out the app. I really loved it. I use it with my husband, and it really, really helped us a lot. Then I had my baby, didn't think about anything else. And then back in October, I thought okay, I need to go back to my maternity leave. And I was really ready to take on a new challenge. So that's why I started to look around, see what the opportunities are. But nothing really felt right. I don't know. I just couldn't really find something that I really care about. And I need to believe in the product to join a company. And I also wanted to lead the entire marketing department. And then I was talking with my husband. I was like, something doesn't feel right. If it was something like Paired, and literally one day after, Kevin texted me and said that they were looking for a CMO if I knew somebody. And I was like, that's me.
The sliding into your DMs of founder recruiting.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So that worked. And that's how I started to work there. And I think why I joined, well, as I mentioned, I was really ready to take a step up and start leading the entire marketing department before I was taking care of performance marketing growth. That is one part of, the game, but I really wanted to have the full overview. Another thing is that I just love early stage startups. That's my passion. Yeah. And, I think it's nice to work in an established business that is 8-10 years old, but it's so much fun to be there at the beginning. You're 20 people, you have an idea, boom, you realize that right away. It's so much different. And I don't know, it just felt right. We are 24 people at the moment. Wow. We were 15 when I joined. So really, really small team. We are agile. We are fast. We are all professional. There's also, I think, something that they did right is that they invested a lot in having senior people at the beginning. And I think this is such a great move because yes, you spend a bit of money, on hiring, good people, but then everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone is super independent, just feels amazing. And also the product. It's about love and everyone loves love. And, I think in the first month I received an email from a customers. And I literally started to cry. She was like, I've been with my husband for 15 years. I use your app and I feel more connected than ever. And she mentioned all these little things that she loved about her husband that she forgot about. Just made my day. So yeah, I'm really proud.
Yeah, that's really cool. Working on something that you're so passionate about.
It makes doing boring computer stuff all day a little bit easier, right?
Exactly. And to be honest, also what I love about this is similar to Blinkist, if you want. When I joined Blinkist, it was 7 years ago. No one knew about it. I remember telling people, I work for Blinkist. People were like, what? What is it? But then right now it's a well-established brand. Everyone knows it. And especially at the beginning, people were like, oh, why should I pay for like a 5 minutes, 15 minutes version of books? And people now are like, yes, I get it. And I think it's really similar for like, the relationship side. Right now, people are like, why do I have to pay for something like that? Why do I need to care even? So I think it's really exciting to be the first app, the first brand in this vertical, and to make it famous and successful. And more competitors will come, but we're ready for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So one of the things that I know you've been thinking a lot about at Paired is brand marketing and how different your approach to that is from your Blinkist days of doing a lot heavier kind of performance marketing, user acquisition. So I'm curious, why, as part of Paired, do you think brand marketing is going to be so key to the long-term success of the company?
Of course. So let's start from the fact that I am more of a tech performance person. That's where my expertise are. I studied computer science and then I started marketing. So, performance marketing is my sweet spot. I love it. And that's what I did in my previous jobs at Kayak and at Blinkist. I was the first person joining the team.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think Blinkist is really known for doing well. Like their performance marketing engine is that's why everybody knows what Blinkist is, right? Because it's everywhere.
Exactly. And I mean, it's working, right? It's amazing. Yeah. At the same side, I think that especially once you start having maybe an audience that is a bit broader, I think Blinkist is still targeting a little bit of a niche, if you think about it. While, for example, Paired, is targeting everyone that is in a relationship. I think, having a strong brand is so important. And for example, think about the dating apps. Like there's so many dating apps out there, but Tinder is still the best one. And it's because they build like a super strong brand. It's even like, it's like a common term, even if I never use a dating app, but it's still so well known. So it makes such a difference. Also, performance marketing, we all know it can become addictive. There's only so much that you can grow. And also, I think it's also easy to replicate. Like I see now that, especially in the educational vertical, there's so many new competitors coming up. It's so hard to keep up. And, maybe you were the first one doing these campaigns, but these people come in with like a small team, they copy what you've done and boom, they kind of steal everything. At the same time, also, I think that when you're talking about love, there's so much emotions, about that I feel that just focusing on performance marketing and what works, it will be just one side of it. So that's why they decided to take a completely different approach and start from day zero, building a strong brand that will be recognized, that will be remembered, and that will make actually our paid acquisition a little bit easier, more sustainable, more long-term. So the first thing I did is to hire someone that knows about brand, because as I mentioned, I'm the performance girl. But I'm really excited about, working more on this. And I've been kind of like taking care of this like transition, working with brand awareness tool, defining our brand book. But next week we have a new director of brand joining, and I'm so excited about that. So we'll see how it goes.
Where does the rubber meet the road for an app and actually thinking about brand marketing? Are you thinking about it as kind of a percentage of spend allocation? Are you thinking about it in terms of, making sure that all the ads kind of contribute to that brand? Because one of the things in the industry is that ugly ads perform super well, but might not actually be good for your brand. So do you see it as kind of like this all-encompassing thing, but then also something that you're directly going to put money into?
Yeah, I think I see on both sides. So for me, brand is everything. Every time that you have a touch point with, a user or potential user or your customer, that's where brand lives. So it needs to transpire in every single ads, message, thing that you put out there. So for example, having like a strong, brand guideline, using them for your ads and so on. But at the same time, I also think that if you just do that, that's not enough to build a strong brand. You need to put budget behind. And there are some platforms, channels that are better at brand awareness than others. I'm thinking, for example, about, paid content, Outbrain and Taboola. That's a platform where I spend a lot of time on. It's a performance channel and everyone will use it as a performance channel. But especially in some markets where the competition is not so high, since you pay for CPC, you have so many impressions that it actually becomes stronger than TV. So, you can still do a lot of awareness campaigns without spending millions on TV, because usually, small startups, they don't have that budget to spend, and TV is like a long-term game. So I think, yes, allocating budget, but depending on the stage where you are, the company you're working for, the startup, the product, and so on. So in my case, I would actually be targeting this on both sides. And at the end of the day, what I want to see in terms of results, that's the hard part. How do you measure that? Is like, I want to have yeah, it's the question that everyone asks. Yeah. I want to have a healthy shares between paid and organic. That's at the end what I want to see. And I also want to see that overall, my paid acquisition costs, instead of becoming like higher and higher, they maybe stay at the same level, or they even go down. Because, the more you spend, if you spend $1 million, if you spend 4 million, you can expect your conversion rate to go down. What if by doing more awareness campaign, I'm able to actually maintain that conversion rate, even when I spend more on performance marketing? And at the same time, I have a lot of organics coming in. That is the dream. How to do it? Yeah, that's hard.
We need to do a follow-up podcast in a year and talk through all the failures and successes.
Brand takes years. That's the thing with brand, right? Like, it's not something you can, like, Blinkist, I would say, is an established brand, but that took years of performance marketing. And I would say they have a really, Blinkist's brand when you think of it, right? It's clean, it's professional, like it's associated with learning. There's like some very clean associations. I see Paired as very obvious place where that I think you can build a very different association, obviously, but like a very similar kind of, associating the emotions and the feeling for the brand.
Exactly.
But yeah, as I said, it's really hard to know when you have it. One question I wanted to ask about, and obviously you have a new brand director coming in who will help and stuff like this, but how, in terms of like, how do you envision setting the brand? Because it is so, there's obviously like tactical important things, like you said, it has to probably play to love, right? It has to be approachable and probably a warmer brand than would be something else. So I'm just imagining here, but like, how do you imagine as a marketer involving founders, involving employees, like how do you envision defining a brand at this stage? Because you're fairly early. Like Paired's been around for how long?
1.5 years. So we are pretty new, and also like, the product changed so much in the past 1.5 years. So I opened it back when I was pregnant, and then I opened when my daughter was 3 months old, and it was like, oh my God, that's a completely different app. And that's what happened where you are like an early stage startup. So I think right now we're still in the exploration phase. I think that the product is exactly what we wanted it to be. We know that, what we have works, and now it's just a matter of like better defining the brand. How are we going to do it? So, well, the first thing I did is I organized like a brainstorming session with all the founders and the people that have been there from the beginning. And what I did is just I was using Miro, and I look for a template brand. This sounds good. Let me use this one.
You're giving away all your secrets.
Yeah, exactly. And I just ran like a super general learning session about that. It was so good for me to just get, the baseline. But that's also where I define, okay, I need someone to come in and be involved. We are really lucky that right now we're 24 people. So it's not a lot. Like, even if we were to involve everyone, to be honest, it is not so bad. And also I think that people knows what they are responsible for and what they can give input, but it's someone else that will have to decide. That's what I love about, Paired. That is really, really fast. So how I wanted to set it up is that I want the brand person to have a specific budget, because I feel that without a budget, a brand person, they're lost. What do they do? But also I want for them not to have too many stakeholders involved. So it's going to be the founders, myself, some other key people that have been there since the beginning. And to be honest, the one that will drive the strategy is the customer. So I saw that recently you had a super interesting episode, and I don't know, I really, really loved it because you were talking with, I think, Sean, regarding the regarding the importance of listening to your customers and like how to feed customers' input to the decision that you make in terms of product, the same you're going to do in terms of brand. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this is going to take us.
Yeah. And speaking of understanding your customers, I think it's one kind of undervalued aspect of finding marketing channel fit for your product. And it's something I know you've talked about before, and I wanted to dive into. Everybody kind of defaults to Facebook or Google ads. But now, there's TikTok, there's like a million different channels. How do you think about fitting kind of both your brand, but also finding the right marketing channel for the right product?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, to be honest, I joined Bayer just in January, and there was a tremendous growth. Like compared to the year before, right now, I think we grew like 30x, and we're now like at 800,000 monthly active users. So the growth was insane, and you probably are wondering, how did we do it? It's actually through mainly Facebook at the beginning. So Facebook is still the go-to channel, but I did actually a presentation long time ago, 5 years ago, on the importance of really diversifying your channel's acquisition, and even more when you want to have performance channel and maybe awareness channel, or maybe to build this like funnel where you have like awareness and then you go with like clearly performance things. So usually what I look at the product, I look at the market fit, I look at the customers' feedback, and definitely like at the potential, scalability, difficulty, resources needed for that channel. So there's a lot of things that goes into like considering. So for example, I would say that something like Facebook is really easy to start. You just need one person, maybe some people to do the creatives, and then you can start. Well, if you want to do TV, not only you have to spend a lot of money, on like media buying, but you need to have a strong TV spot, and that is going to cost you minimum 150K. So that's usually how I look, at the next channel that I'm gonna explore. I tend to have like the pillars, the channels that are working, where I continue investing, like say massively. In this channel, usually 30% will go to like just testing new things. And in the meantime, I will expand my budget, like starting to explore new channels, knowing that for some of them it's going to take longer. So when I was at Blinkist, one of the things that I was really proud of is establishing paid content as one of the main driver. So Albin and Taboola. That took me and my team, I think 9 months. It's a long time. It's like 9 months of suffering and really bad performance, and people saying like, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" But it eventually paid off. Now I think Blinkist is one of the main spenders when it comes to paid content. So yeah, there's a lot of things to take in consideration, and definitely like listening to customers is number one, but also look at the resources that you have in house. Look at what you need to make it successful. Look at how much time you have. Especially if you're working with like investors and you need to bring numbers, like what do you need to bring back? Do you need to bring back ambitious and really like high growth? That's one thing. Then you can just explore different platforms and so on. Do you need to focus on profitability? Because we've all seen what's happening right now. There's a lot of people being laid off. Just saw the other day like an email from the Uber CEO, and VC in general, they're like really turning from like extreme growth to like, are you profitable? How long is it going to take to be
suddenly
profitable?
Like CAC LTV balance later is not such a great strategy, right?
Exactly. And so I think that really matters also, like, what do you want to achieve and how much time do you have?
Yeah. And then in kind of the next level deeper from product channel fit, and I think you've talked about this before, that Blinkist, you just never were able to scale up on TikTok. Some people are like really successful on TikTok. It just like wasn't a good kind of product channel fit for Blinkist. But even within, Facebook app versus Instagram versus other ads versus other channels, how do you think about fitting the messaging and the ads themselves to the channel, and like what works and what doesn't on an ad basis versus even a channel basis?
Yeah, that, to be honest, like it changes for every platform. Like it changes even from your own platform. So, the message that you put on your website or on your app is like much different from the one that you would put in an ads, for example. What we see, like an example of what we've seen is that we do a lot of like user testing and research with our customers to see what they love, what are the sections that they love. And what is interesting is that the section or like the topics that they like in the app, they're not the one that brought them in. So that's really interesting to see how different it is. Like, it's like I'm driven to a certain product in an app because I think that I'm interested in this, but then I end up using it for something else. But if I use that message in the ads, it doesn't actually work. So you really need to like have a super broad approach and consider, okay, who are you talking to? Which channels are you? How much time do you have to sell your product? Because if it's a Facebook ad with, just a static image, there's not a lot of time. If it's an influencer ad, you can tell like a long story. You can be funny. You can actually show the use case of every day. So I think it really has to change. And then, it's pretty clear that there's a generational gap between different platforms. Like if I look about TikTok versus like Facebook, my mom is on Facebook. I am on Instagram. My nephew is on TikTok,
Well, but I imagine for your target demo, age cohort's pretty important. Like probably most people in the TikTok set might not have decade-long relationships they're trying to sustain and maintain, right?
Exactly. Although, the fact that we are about like having fun, especially in the relationship, we are targeting actually a kind of a broad amount of people that can be together for a year, 2 years, or like 10 years. Is really, really broad. And then makes it nice, but also like there's no way that we can use one message to rule them all and get them all interested in the app. We really need to go deeper and understand what are the motivation. And with influencer marketing, for example, is easier because the audience, more or less how old they are, what they're interested in. In other platforms like Facebook, where you go with like a broad targeting, you need to go with what sells. So.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you about was how you power all of that with data. So we're talking about, doing the user research, looking at, and you're kind of in a unique position right now, having just joined Paired, and I imagine there wasn't a ton of infrastructure before you got there. And then with your computer science background, so how have you been thinking about building out a data platform to understand, like you talked about it a few minutes ago, how messaging toward one feature actually brings them in, but then they're going to get hooked on another feature. How do you know that? And then how do you measure that? How do you perform against that? And how do you build out a data pipeline to continually measure those sorts of things?
Of course, that's my favorite topic.
Again, I think one thing Blinkist did really well, like from my understanding of the company, is that was, you think it's a small audiobook company, and yes, it is, but also like it's really a performance marketing machine that they figured out, right?
Yeah.
And that's true for a lot of companies that do well in what we do, right? For better or worse, a lot of the bigger ones, they figured out a product, but then the second part is figuring out that channel unlock. So sorry, please.
Absolutely. And I think it's also so interesting to see, because when I joined Blinkist, it was like, as I say, around 7 years ago, and we were also like 30 people. So their data infrastructure was, there was no data infrastructure, we were at the beginning, we were still using a lot of spreadsheet, but I think since the beginning, there was a strong willingness to build everything in-house. While, 7 years later, I'm joining Paired and I see that their approach is completely different. And a lot of time is like, why would we build something in-house when there's a service like Revenue Card, for example, they can do that for you, I think it's completely different. So I found myself building a completely different type of data infrastructure. And I did it twice. So that's really exciting to see the differences. For me, having data, it's super important. Right now, since we are using a lot of tools, like external tools, the risk is that all this knowledge is distributed across like 3 or 4 different platforms, but then there's no way to bring them together. And I think, to be honest, that's the issue that I'm facing right now. So we are working, we have a project, we made already like a lot of improvements on like bringing everything in-house and then understanding, okay, what is that we need? Because when I joined, we were still using, Google Spreadsheet. That's how you start. But that's the difference that I see. I think before it was more like build everything in-house, do everything manually, have a team that will like take care of like maintaining API access and so on and so forth. And right now is more like, okay, distribute, use a lot of tools, but then also bring back in-house and have a strong visualization tool that will allow us to go deeper on the funnel from like the moment that they see the ad once to, downloading and then using the app and doing analysis on the behavior. So that's usually, I follow the entire funnel for that. It's pretty exciting.
So what's the current stack for Paired? I know you'll use Revenue Cat. Do you use Amplitude? Do you use an MMP? Like what's the stack currently, and how do you see that evolving as you grow?
Listen, then I want the money from all these, tools that I'm using, because if I have to mention them, no, I'm joking. So at the moment we're using MMP, that is a Just. We are using, of course, Revenue Cat. We are also using Amplitude. Right now we're looking for a tool to download our marketing data. There are a couple of options out there. I think Fivetran is probably the most common one, but we're still trying to define, bringing all the data in-house on Snowflake, and then visualizing the data through Locker. So this is the setup that we have right now. In the past, I've been using, I don't know how to pronounce it, C-Sense or Sisense. It was Periscope data before. That was also really strong in terms of visualization, but I found the Locker is like next step.
It's interesting. This you talk about and I actually was introduced to Toby, who's one of the founders of Blinkist years ago. As he found us organically. This would have maybe been 2020 before we had raised our Series A and all this stuff. And he was like, oh my God, like we have solved this internally. This is such a nightmare. He told the story of your journey internally of having to build all this stuff in house. And here we are 5 years later for Blinkist, maybe even longer. Like, okay, now you can't have tools, but this like last step still exists of, okay, I have like these vendors for, my behavioral data, my acquisition data, and my subscription data, and we still have to merge them, right? And from what I've heard, it's a very common pattern. It's what we do internally, right? We use lots of different vendors for our analytics, and then we pull it all together in a data warehouse for customization, and things like that. But that's a much better game, because like by the time it gets to Snowflake, you're just writing SQL queries and gluing stuff together. You're not like, especially when you involve something like Fivetran, I think is a great tool as well for just handling some of the like data schlepping and things like this. But I wonder if that will further become compressed at some point. We'll have this podcast again in 5 years and see if like there's now like a meta super platform, and maybe it's Revenue Cat. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And I think also right now, as a matter of like, there's so many also competitors coming up from all these like different parts, that you need to bring together. So it's really, really hard to make even a decision, like looking about, the marketing API, for example. Oh my God, there's so much out there. But then when you go deeper, you see that the main players are like always up to date to the changes on API. They're more reliable. They have a stronger customer support. They also cost double. But
Wait. So this is my naivete. Can you tell me what a marketing API is like?
Oh, so connecting. So for example, connecting to Facebook to download data. So or to Outbrain to download data.
Oh, so you don't have to connect to each like platform individually.
Exactly. I call it marketing API, but maybe it has like a different name. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's aggregating these like, it's very, similar level to what we do, right? Which is aggregate disparate data sources and try to normalize it, right?
Exactly. And I think also regarding data, there's something interesting about automation that I think it's also changing a little bit. Like if I look at my experience before, I remember, spending a lot of time with the team building automation rules, for example, for Outbrain. And right now, all the things that, we develop, they are actually within the platform. So you don't need to do anything. It's already done. And I think we're moving more and more in that direction. Right now, I don't know if it makes sense to use like, an automation tool, even for Facebook ads. The only things where you need help is actually the uploading of creatives. That is like a nightmare. But still, everything else is kind of done with a script and that's it. Or it's already developed within the interface that you're using, being that the Facebook Business Manager or whatever. So it's really interesting to see how the marketing platforms are evolving. And that's good for us.
You learn something new every day. So I haven't talked as much in depth with somebody at that level of building out your own data warehouse and visualizing in Snowflake. And there's a lot to it. And It's cool that you kind of brought a lot of that experience from Paired to such an early stage. From Blinkist, having spent so many years building all of it out. And then, like you said, Paired is very, very smart to hire somebody like you early and bring all of that knowledge and experience to build it out internally.
This is why the game gets harder and harder too, because pioneers like Blinkist figure it out, and then those people go, and now that becomes the bar, right? To compete in the for the next generation of apps, right? But we also have, like you were saying, like the automation getting pushed down to the platforms. That's a field leveler, right? Because now more apps have access to that. It's baked into the platforms, and things like that. So, and then the end result ideally is better targeting, matching, and better apps, because you're spending less company resources, spinning up internal data. You'll do a lot of work to get the Looker Snowflake setup going, but then that's not a huge lift. And you'll be able to like spend more time, like, hey, like going back to the stuff we talked at the beginning of the call, which is brand, awareness, like the things that you actually get into marketing to do, right?
Exactly.
Which is reach people and spread the word about a good service.
Exactly. And I think that's the risk of like going too much into the data side, that sometimes you have access to so much data that you can get lost. I remember spending hours and hours looking at like going deeper and deeper and deeper until at some point you lose significance. And so the data you're looking at means literally nothing. So I think it's always good to have a good balance between like going into details, but also think about the overall business, and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I know the two of you could nerd out on this for another 30 minutes.
We hit a topic where I I'm uniquely passionate about.
Yeah, but we are getting short on time, and there's something I really wanted to talk to you about. So you and Andy from Feature, the co-founder of Feature, do a podcast, Mobile Growth Nightmares, and I freaking love this podcast. I'm a huge fan. And one of the things I love, and I talk about it on this podcast quite a bit, probably to a fault, but it really is just so true that you learn as much from fuck ups, as y'all call it on the Mobile Growth Nightmares, as you do from the successes. But most people only want to talk about the successes. So it's amazing that you have a whole podcast dedicated to screwing up and learning from it, and then talking, being honest about having screwed up. And some of them are like, hey, we wasted $200,000 because of a bug or some misconfiguration or whatever. And that's a big thing to both own, but then also to realize, hey, that's a learning experience. And it happens. Like when you're spending that much money, you're going to screw up and waste some of it. So anyways, that kind of a quick overview and plug for your podcast there. But I did want to talk through some of your favorite and some of the more interesting screw ups from the podcast. So one of the ones I thought was especially interesting was Clement and his cease and desist. Can you give us a quick story on that?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, also it's kind of like it happened to me as well somehow, because we were working together. So Clement, he was like the head of paid social at Blinkist. So he was in my team, and we were taking care of, paid acquisition. And at some point we found an amazing article plus ads that work. It was like something about Bill Gates and the reading list of Bill Gates. It was insane. Oh my God, it worked so perfectly. And we were like clapping each other. Yeah, good job. We found the one. And then I think after maybe a couple of weeks or maybe a month, I don't remember. We receive, not from Bill Gates, but from someone really close to him. They say like, you need to just bring it down and stop running. And that was like such a nightmare, because at that moment, since it was working so well, all these ads were pointing, like we were using this creative. And so as soon as we removed the ad, the account went from spending, 100 to spending 10. And so of course there were not enough events. Yeah, it was a disaster. Like the entire channel fell down. And also the same creative was used across multiple channels. So we had to take this, everywhere. So that was a disaster. So don't use famous names, or if you use it, maybe not too much.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd actually be interesting to know what the actual case law on that would be, right? Because it's not like you were saying Bill Gates endorses Blinkist, right? You were just spreading news about a public figure, right? You might have been in the clear, but as a small startup, you can't afford to figure that out, right? You're just like, well, okay, let's try something else.
Exactly. Looking at what is happening in the US with all the lawsuit, I'm like, I'm going to stay away from that.
It's also true. Like Blinkist is a German company, right? So like, where's your standing, Bill? I don't know. but yeah, again, like you're just like cease and desist. Okay. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
But it seemed like another great lesson from that one too is to not put too many eggs in one basket, right? It's like even if you have this one that's performing so well, to continue to maintain diversity of ads and budget, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what I'm doing right now. Not only diversifying the channels, but really diversify the messages as well. Like make sure that you have at least like 4 or 5 creatives that are working at the same time. So if something happens, you have like a backup plan.
Yeah. All right. And so then another good story, and this podcast hasn't come out yet, so I haven't been able to listen to it, but it will be out before we release our podcast, the Subclub podcast with you on it. But there's a story with the Runtastic app that's going to be on the Mobile Growth Nightmare. So tell us about that one.
Yeah, it was like, so it was actually a live recording that we did at the ASA conference in Berlin 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it was really nice just to see people, in real life. It was amazing. And we invited Luca Stefanutti, that is leading growth at Adidas Runtastic. And if you haven't heard of that, is an app for running. It was pretty famous and it was just called Runtastic, but then it was acquired by Adidas. And he was telling these like super interesting stories about the fact that when it was acquired, Adidas, actually, that is better, Adidas, is such a big name. So of course they wanted to change it, right? To change the name to represent that. But then what happened is that suddenly, since it was like a really well-known platform, they lost like so much, when they changed the name, they lost so much organic discoverability. Like people were looking for that and they were not finding. And at the same time, there was such a big drop in conversion because all these people that were looking for Adidas shoes on the App Store, I don't know why you will do that, but they were doing that. They will arrive, download the app, and then they would say like, wait a moment, where's the shoes that I wanted to buy? So the conversion rate dropped as well. This means that all the ads campaign and everything that was depending on the events kind of, went to boop. And it was like a super disaster. And it took them a month to really recover. And it's something that probably, they should have thought about it. I think there were some discussion, but they didn't imagine the impact to be so big. So it's so interesting because you will feel like, yeah, of course I'm going to use this username in the App Store. Makes a lot of sense. But yeah, you need to be careful to what you wish for. You're going to have a lot of installs, but...
It kind of takes us all the way back around to our first part of the conversation, is that the Adidas brand is about buying shoes and the Runtastic brand was about tracking your running. And so when they switched the branding, it switched the expectation of people coming into the app. So yeah, that's so interesting.
So hopefully the episodes will be out really soon. Let's see. I'll ask Andy to work on that just after this.
Nice. Well, we are running out of time. I wish we could talk to you for another hour because this has been amazing, and there's so much more that you've learned over the years that you could share. So we'll have to have you back on sometime. But as we're wrapping up, are you hiring at Paired, or what else do you want to say as we wrap up?
Yeah, so we are hiring a lot of people. So please have a look at the website, www.pair.com. We're hiring like a bunch of new people. We don't want to grow too much, but we have some like key positions that we're looking for. So please check it out. And in general, like I'm really excited to see, where this company is growing. I believe 100% of what we're doing. If you want to just have a chat, I'm always available for learning exchange. You can find me on LinkedIn. And you can see my podcast that comes out every 6 months because we're not as good as you guys. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Gessica, for being on the podcast. It was so fun talking to you.
Thank you.
To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.